Coach, team's performing really well. 15-4. You just had the biggest conference home win in program history over Gardner-Webb, 41 points, dominating. Congratulations are in order for that. Anytime a record is broken. How do you feel like the team is performing based on what you were expecting and how they've been doing so far?
Yeah, we're still a work in progress. We're working every day. I thought we had a great practice yesterday. We got tripped up at Asheville in a really short prep versus a team that had been sitting there for a couple of weeks waiting on us, and we played like it. They really punched us in the gut, and felt like we were chasing ghosts, just kind of a step behind, not really sure where to be in that one. So I thought going over to Charleston Southern and figuring out a way and on their home floor was a step in the right direction. And then coming back and I don't think Gardner-Webb had their best stuff. I think it was as much about them not playing up to their ability as it was what we did to them. But we were there. We capitalized. We made a few baskets. And anytime you throw a few in from deep, you have a little bit more energy on the other end.
You talked about the shooters throwing it in from deep. Chase Johnson had some threes. Trey Benham came off the bench too, had a 4 3-point game, 4 threes in that first half. How has that perimeter offense really been coming along? It seems like it's starting to really hit its stride, especially in Big South play.
Well, we designed this team. It was to be a team that could play outside in and inside out. The idea was to have enough shooting. We didn't have that a season ago, and we were fairly efficient despite our lack of shooting. But space and shooting are kind of a central component to success when it comes to offensive efficiency. There's a few different ways to achieve that. We've tried to sacrifice at times athleticism for guys that can really shoot the ball from the perimeter, and when they're going in, it looks good, and when they're not, sometimes you get performances like we had at App State where you got to grit it out a little bit.
Still a win, though. It's all about just getting the W. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter how you do them at the end of the year. It matters that you do them.
One of the things that we've talked about before is Kamani Hamilton, and you talked about the leadership that he brings on and off the floor, and I think the people here would be really interested to know just the one-of-one character that he is, because as you said, he really is one of a kind, and he can help this team really go.
Yeah, I mean, Kamani he's an interesting human because at any given moment he will say anything to any person, me included. So you never have to wonder what he's thinking because he tells you exactly what he's thinking at any moment, and that can be really entertaining at times. And really, if you get him away from basketball and competitive spaces that come along with basketball, then it's very entertaining. He's an entertaining human being to interact with every day. I tell his parents the same thing. Kamani's a lot of fun. He really is. He makes everyone laugh. And I think to your point, his willingness to be unselfish and to have very little ego is a huge reason why we've been able to have success a year ago and why we're having some success this season. He doesn't treat anyone differently. He doesn't care if he scores. He just wants to win, and he really is. He's really a pleasant person to be around every day.
And it's fair to say whether he has the ball in his hands or not, he can still direct the offense in many ways, however you may need him out there with the X's and O's.
Yeah, he's really worked hard at his perimeter jump shooting. I think, unfortunately for him, at times this year, he's been a little too eager to show that, and he's taken some shots maybe that were ill-advised. But that sometimes comes along with that is, you've got this new toy and you want to play with it. You want to show everybody you can make these jump shots, and you kind of get away from what makes you really good. And what makes Kamani really good is his ability to make two players guard him. And when he makes two players guard him, when he draws that additional help defender or two help defenders, he's a willing and able passer, and that's what makes him special, not his ability to shoot the basketball. Shooting the basketball is just something he's added to it. So I think he's done a better job with his shot selection the last couple games of just picking and choosing his spots and really trying to be a facilitator first. And he's added about 15 or 16 pounds in the offseason of muscle, and he's able to flip his hips and kind of get into that back down. We call it bully ball. Some people call it Barkley, but those back down situations. And then he's really a great passer out of those situations too. So those are kind of his new toys. He's still learning how to use them and not get away from what's made him so good in the past.
Another standout on your team so far, Damarian Williams. And what impressed me most about his stat line from the last game against Gardner-Webb, he didn't make any field goals, but it still felt like he had a big impact on the game, hit 10 free throws, had some playmaking opportunities. What did you kind of see from him in that game and how he's evolved this season?
Well, I saw it in his eyes. He kind of jammed his hand and had it was all swollen. He didn't practice a couple of days going into the last game, and so I was a little worried just because he had 3 former teammates on that Gardner-Webb team, plus the coach that recruited him to college, and then their point guard. He and Damarian were teammates at the high school level too. So he's got all these guys. You could see it in his eyes. He wanted to play well so badly against his friends and former coaches, and so I thought he pressed a little bit. We talked about it. I didn't think he necessarily took any bad shots or anything like that, but he was just wanting to do well at such a high level that I thought it had a negative impact probably on his performance. But he didn't let it affect the other end. He really defended. He made some free throws, and he, we talked about him maybe going out there and getting one more stretch to try to kind of get it right, and he politely declined, and we played the bench.
I mean, that's tough, though. Anytime you're going against a former team, especially in the era of the transfer portal, you see that more and more. How does he balance that kind of mental aspect of it going against a place that he used to play with, like you said, teammates, coaches, and whatnot?
Well, hopefully he'll do a little better job next time. Honestly, he played a really good game. He just didn't make shots. I think you combine the nervousness of wanting to play well against his buddies and not practicing the couple days beforehand. It probably was not a recipe for making shots at a high level.
Well, when it comes to the front court, you have a lot of front court depth. You're starting to get even more as Simon continues to round into form. What have you liked about that unit? Of course, it starts with Bodo and what he brings to the table. But even if his scoring has dropped a little bit this year, your guys have really started to show that this is a strength of the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we built the team the way we did. A year ago, our on-off numbers, we were a significantly worse team when we went to our bench. And we knew that was an issue. That got us when we got into foul trouble in the conference tournament, when we got into foul trouble in the CBI championship game. Each one of those games, even the games on the road, when we lost at Asheville last year and we lost at Longwood last year, we were in huge foul trouble in each of those games. So when we attacked the recruiting in the offseason, the goal was to not put ourselves in that situation. We were going to look over at the bench, and when somebody got into foul trouble or somebody got nicked up with an injury, we were going to have a second body that looked like the first body to put in there. I think we've achieved that, and it hasn't been pretty at times because we've had so many moving pieces, and we're still disjointed on both ends of the floor in stretches. But what you can see now is if you look at our on-off numbers, and when I mean that, I mean how are you? What happens to our offensive efficiency and our defensive efficiency numbers when certain guys are on the floor versus off the floor? Now we've got a bench that's stronger than our starters, and that's what we wanted to have when we set out to build this team, and I think we're on our way to getting there.
Simon has soaked up a lot of those backup minutes for Bodo this year, and he's somebody that you think he's just scratching the surface of what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, Simon's terrific. He's got to get in a little bit better shape still, and he's still on a little bit of a restriction for what he can do. So he's probably not going to get in that great shape this season. It's probably more of a next season thing. But no, Simon's terrific. He's as talented as anybody on our team. He's as versatile as anybody on our team. He can really shoot the ball. He can handle it. And I think you've seen probably the last couple games. We love the idea of our 4 and 5 positions being able to handle the ball and transition. If you think about it, defensive transition systems are typically built with guards and kind of the get-back guys that are back in the paint. And when you can lead the break with your 4 and 5 position, you just invert the other team's defense in ways that they're not used to practicing. And it creates some real offensive advantage for us, and especially when we have guys out there that are cerebral enough to take advantage of those mismatches. And when you've got guys like Bobby and Simon and Kamani out there, those three in particular, they can really, really take advantage of those situations and put us in positions to be effective offensively.
Bobby's another guy, speaking of the depth on this team, when he comes off the bench, it feels like he's a spark. He can distribute the basketball, he can score if he has to, and he's just a key guy that you can bring off the bench in situations, and really a luxury to have somebody like that just coming off the bench.
Yeah, Bobby's a little bit like Kamani. He's about winning, which is nice. He really doesn't care about scoring. He'll score when necessary, but he's really built like a point guard. And as good a player as Keza is, he's more of a points guard than a point guard. He's wired to score baskets first, so he's having to kind of play the game just a little differently than Bobby. We like the lineup where they're out there together. We have more more handlers out there at once. And we like the idea of Bobby coming in and really trying to manufacture baskets for those guys like Chase and Trey and Simon, those guys that rely on others to make advantage for them. So he's been great in his role, and same deal. He's been a little bit nicked up, but I think he's going to miss practice today. Hopefully he can get back and really get fully healthy for a stretch run.
You touched on Keza a little bit. This year he's been the focal point of opposing team scouting reports. He's had to deal with that throughout the season. How has his progression gone with handling that additional pressure?
I think it's been up and down, and this is, this deal is not unique to Keza. The preseason expectations that come along with, being the preseason conference player of the year, they are very, very difficult to manage, and I think that's been something that Keza's really had to work on both mentally and physically. You're at the top of everyone's scouting report. The other, whatever there are, the other 150 or so players in the league are all in some way, shape, or form jealous of him. And so, you've got that deal. Physically, they're coming at you. You're getting their best shot. You're getting, then mentally, every time he touches the ball, he's trying to be the conference player of the year. And I think that's a really hard space to be in. But I think he's been humbled a little bit, and he's bounced back. And I think he's had 2 really good games in a row here. And I thought he had a terrific, just absolutely dynamic practice yesterday. He really shared the ball, and he really pushed the ball. And I think he's going to have a great stretch run for us.